Hi guys, welcome to a new video. In this video, we'll be drafting this princess bustier dress. It has a keyhole in the middle and puff sleeves. If this is your vibe, please keep watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you'll be notified whenever I make a new post. For this style, we'll be needing about 3 to 4 yards of fabric depending on how full you want your puff sleeves to be. And the first thing you're going to do is to cut the lower part of this dress. And to do that, you're going to be folding using the widest part of your lower body, which is your hip measurement, and add your allowance. Now, the first thing to do is to mark a line, which is going to serve as your waistline. Now, since this is a dress, the upper part of this dress is 16 inches. So you're going to be taking it out. And from the 16 inches, you mark your hip line, which is 27 inches. And the full length of this dress, mine is 38. I like to add an extra 2 inches for my folding allowance. After marking the points, the next thing is to connect your lines together using a ruler. I'm just trying to label gown length, allowance, hip line, and the upper line is the waistline. The next step is to take your horizontal measurement. On my waistline, I take my waist circumference divided by 4. I add an extra inch for that and 1.5 for allowance. I do the same on my hip line. Take your hip circumference divided by 4, mark the point and add an extra 1.5 for your allowance. Now for this bottom part, I take whatever I have on my hip line and I take away 1.5 inch from it. The next thing to do is to join all of my marked points together using a curve rule, just like you see me doing. Now I'll go ahead and cut this out following the lines, just like so. I like to notch my actual gown length. Now for the back, you need a fabric that's about 2 inches wider than the front. And I'll just be extending the hip line. This is me writing allowance, so that's your zipper allowance. I'm using 1.5 inch for my zipper allowance, but on the hip line, I like to make it 2 inches or 2.5 inches just to create an extra allowance for the butt. And on the lower line, I'm still going to mark 1.5 inch. Then I'm going to connect the 3 points together, just like you see me doing. And that's all for the back piece. So you're just going to go ahead and trace it out, following the lines, just like you see me doing. So now that we've gotten our front and our back piece, the next thing is to place both on a lining piece and trace it out. And after doing that, because we are going to be using the lining to turn up the fabric, I'm still going to be taking 1.5 inch away from the length of the lining, just like you see me doing here. Now for the princess bustier, I've gone ahead to iron interfacing on my lining. It is about 19 inches long and about 16 inches wide on fold. And you can determine the wideness by dividing your bust span by 4 and adding about 6 or 7 inches. I'll go ahead to start marking my vertical measurement, and I'm starting with my bust point, which is about 11 inches, followed by the under bust, which is about 15 inches. Then I'll go ahead to mark the half length. Mine is 16.5 inch. I'll go ahead and add an allowance of about 1.5 inch. And that's just me marking the points. I'll do the same, mark the point on the other side of the fabric so that my lines will be straight. I'll get my ruler and then rule my lines across. And I'll just go ahead to label. That's my allowance, that's my half length line, that's the under bust line, and this is my bust point line. Next thing is to take my shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is 8.5. I like to add an extra inch for allowance in case I want to trim out. I'll go ahead to measure my neck depth and width, and for this I'm going to be using 3 by 3 inches. So this is just me marking the 3 by 3 inch point. I'll get my curve rule and then I'll connect the 2 points together like so. Now my shoulder point, I'm going to go down by 1 inch for my slope, and I'm going to be connecting it to the neckline, just like you see me doing. Now, because I'm cutting exactly on the fabric, I'm going to be adding half inch sewing allowance, just like you see me doing. So after taking the allowance, I have to add an extra half inch because the neck depth was no longer 3 inches. So this is me trying to carve out the new neck depth. The next step is to get your chest line or your armhole line, which is your bust measurement divided by 6 plus 1.5. So that's me marking the points right there, and I'm going to extend it just like you see me doing. The next thing I'm going to do is to measure whatever I have on my shoulder line, and then I'm going to be marking that exact point on my chest line. I'll go ahead and connect that point to the shoulder line just like you see me doing. On this chest line, I'll take my bust circumference divided by 4 and I'll mark the point just like you see me doing. Now you go ahead and mark the midpoint of your chest line, and mine is 4 inches. So after marking a point there, you go in by half an inch. You also mark a point there. Now I'll go ahead and connect these 3 points to get my armhole just like you see me doing. On my bust line, I'm going to be taking my nipple to nipple measurement plus ½ inch, which is 4 plus ½ inch, 4.5. And on my under bust, I'll be taking my nipple to nipple but without the 4 inch. So that's 4 inches on other lines aside the bust line, which is 4.5. I'll connect the points with a line just like you see me doing. The next thing is to connect the line to my armhole to get my princess dart. So what I'm doing is taking the full measurement of my armhole and taking half of it. So if it is 8, you use 4 inches, just like I'm doing. And then you connect the line to the armhole, just like so. Next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and form my cup. This bust is more than 42 inches. So I'm using 2.5 to get my cup. For bust measurement below 40, you can go ahead and use 2 inches. And after connecting up onto my under bust, I'm going to connect with a ruler, just like you see me doing. Now on my bust line, I'm going to come down by 1 inch and mark a point. And using the curved part of my master pattern, I'm going to connect like so. Now to tighten the upper part of this, to the armhole line, I'm going to be going out by 0.75 on both sides to prevent gaping. That's to tighten it so it will not be loose on that part. After doing that, I'm still going to come up by 1 inch from the bust line, and then I'll connect the 2 lines together just like you see me doing. Now on the part of the princess that has the cup, you're going to be extending it a little bit. So I'm going to be taking whatever I have there. In this case, it is 1.5 inch, and I'm going to extend this by 1.5 inch, just like you see me doing. I'll get my ruler and then I'll extend it like so. Now after doing that, I'll do the same thing on the armhole line. I'm going to extend also by 1.5 inches. I'll connect it with my curve rule to give me another armhole. So this is my new armhole. The first armhole is cancelled, so that's the armhole I'm going to be using for this. We're almost done. The last step is to go ahead and impute all our horizontal measurements. On the chest line, I've already imputed my bust measurement. The next thing is just to add my allowance. On my under bust line, I'm taking my under bust measurement. I'm adding the allowance of that part because I'm cutting it out, the part that is going to form the cup, and then I'm adding my allowance. I'll do the same on my waistline. I'll take my circumference divided by 4, add the 2.5 inch because I'll be taking it out before I go ahead and add my allowance. After doing that, I'll connect all the mark points with my ruler, and that will be all for this. So to cut, we're going to be taking this part out. This part that has been marked, I'll be taking it out. Remember, the armhole has changed, so just watch carefully as I cut out. The back has a zip allowance, which makes it about 2 inches wider than the front, which is serve as a zip allowance. The next thing to do is to draw the shoulder line. Mark your shoulder divided by 2. Mark the point, add 1 extra inch in case you want to trim out, just like you see me doing. I'll go ahead now to mark my neck depth and my neck width. On my shoulder line, I also get my shoulder slope. I'll go down by 1 inch and then I'll connect to the neck width. Now, just like we did in front, because this is directly on the fabric, I'm going to be going down by 1/2 inch, which will serve as my allowance. Now I'm going to connect just like so. After doing that, the next thing to do is to take my neck depth, and I'm going to be using 1.5 inch. So this is me marking the point. I'll use my curved rule to get my curve. The next step is to take my bust line, that's my bust point line, take the under bust and also the half line, just like we did in front. After doing that, I'm going to use a ruler to rule the points, and I'm labeling allowance, half length and bust line. You can go ahead to label the under bust, but there's no need for that. So from my shoulder line, I'll be getting my chest line. That's me marking the point, chest line. I'm going to measure whatever I have on my shoulder line, and I'm going to mark the exact point on my chest line. And using a ruler, I'm going to connect that to my shoulder line, just like so. Now on my shoulder line, I'm going to be taking my bust circumference divided by 4, and I'm going to be marking a point. And on my armhole line, I'm going to be getting the midpoint, and then I'm just going to create a curve, just like you see me doing, like so. So that's the curve for the back part of this. Now on my bust line, I'm going to be taking 4.5 inch, just like I did in front, and 4 inches on subsequent areas, just like you see me doing. I'll take my ruler to connect the points together, just like so. Now for the front part, we took half of the armhole to get our princess dart, but for the back, we're not going to be doing that. So after taking the armhole curve, whatever you have, you get the midpoint. In this case, it is 4, but instead of using 4 inches, I'm going to go up by 1.5 inch or 2 inches. You can decide to do whichever you want, and then you're just going to be marking the point. After marking the point, you're going to be using your ruler to connect it, just like so. Now, just like you did in front, on the side back, you're still going to go up by 1 inch, and then you're just going to extend that part, just like you see me doing. You also extend the armhole by 1 inch, and then you connect to get your new armhole, just like so. So this is what it looks like after getting your new armhole. So the old one is cancelled. Now the next step is to go ahead and input your body measurement. I already have my bust line there, so I'm just going to add my allowance. I'm also going to do the same on my waistline. I'm going to add my waist measurement, add my allowance, and then I'm going to connect. After doing all of that, the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and cut this out following the lines that I have made, just like so. So after I was done cutting, this is what it looks like for the back of this dress. Now for the back of this dress, I like to go in by 1/2 inch on the zipper allowance, just to reduce zip bulge a little bit. I like to just take it out. Now for a princess dart bustier, and when you are done joining the front and the back, most of the time the back tends to get a little bit longer than the front. So I like to take out 1 inch from the length of the back part. So this is just me going ahead to remove the 1 inch, just like so. And that's all for the back part of this dress. Now after you are done, the next thing is to place the lining on the actual fabric and trace out, just like you see me doing. This is the center front, this is the side front. You're just going to trace it out exactly like what you have on the lining piece. This is what you are going to have by the time you are done for the front. So this is the front piece, the center and the 2 sides. You're also going to repeat the same process for the back. So you're going to place the lining piece on your actual fabric and you're going to trace out just like you see me doing. That's the center back and this is the side back. By the time I was done, this is what I have for the center back and this is for the side back. Now for the keyhole in the middle, I was already done filming before I realized that I lost the footage. So I'm just going to explain how I came about this. First things first, I went down by 1.5 inch from my neck depth. After marking a point there, I also went down by 2.5 inch and I marked a point there. Then in the middle of the 2.5 inch, I went in by 1 inch and cut out. So I have a fabric that is about 2.5 inch long and 2 inches wide. So basically what I did was cut out a piece that was 2.5 inch long and 2 inches wide. So you come down by 1.5 inch from your neckline, you mark 2.5 inch long and 1 inch wide, and then you cut out. So this is what the keyhole looks like. That's what it looks like for the fabric, and this is what it looks like for the lining piece. That's all for this. In the next video, I'll be showing you how to assemble all the pieces together to form the dress. Thank you.